So as we've been discussing throughout the course, in your portfolio entries and an inquiry project, you'll be using language that sings the world, that both echoes the essence of a phenomenon, but also poetically examines the underlying structures that make this event what it is, the dimensions and nuances of the topic, and how it does what it does. So we're not only describing, we're not only relaying the sequences of events, we're writing to illuminate life, the living, breathing, moving qualities of something. So the object of research here is not to demonstrate exactly what happened. The object of research is to narrate a lived story of a moment, concept, or phenomenon. So meaning here is made in the intersections of noticing, writing, and method in the making. So here, words really matter. Words have a liveliness to them, and they have the ability to create vibrancies of particular moments. So this is a process of constructing or composing texts. And note that texts are plural. This could also mean photography. This could mean your actual written text. It could mean videography. It's a process of getting closer to the meaningfulness of the experience, the story, the event. A process of creating, interpreting, and reflecting. This doesn't mean that at the end of your inquiry you're going to have, some meaning generated with a shiny bow, and everything is, happily ended. It's not that. It's definitely something that's still ongoing, that's processual, that won't be finished. It should generate more questions rather than answers. You're creating a phenomenological text, which is the object of the research process. So at the end of the research process, you're not going to have an answer or some results to communicate, but rather the text is, the narration that you're going to be composing is the object of research itself. Much of this depends on the quality of writing. So consider what forms of writing are needed in order to do justice to the experience. And as I said before, your selection of words really matters. So Van Manen writes that the phenomenological method consists of the ability, or rather the art, of being sensitive to the subtle undertones of language, to the ways language speaks when it allows things themselves to speak. This means that an authentic speaker must be a true listener, able to attune to the deep tonalities of language that normally fall out of our accustomed range of hearing, able to listen to the way things of the world speak to us. The world is no mere conglomeration of mere objects to be described in the language of physical science. Whoever wants to become acquainted with the world of teachers, mothers, fathers, and children should listen to the language spoken by the things in their life worlds, to what things mean in this world. So if we appreciate that language creates worlds, that it's more than only communicative, as Van Manen is proposing, what kinds of words does your topic of inquiry call for? What kinds of words does the experience call for? And what kinds of worlds will the language of your inquiry make possible? So in your inquiry project, words matter. The language histories that form the topic of your inquiry also matter. They have particular histories, origins, and meanings attached to them that can help us to think more deeply about what it is that we're paying attention to. What is this topic? In other words, they have etymological significance. So I've posted in week 6 a link to an etymology dictionary so you can begin investigating the origins of words such as beauty, time, hospitality, grace, or whichever concept or topic it is that you are considering for your inquiry assignment. So consider the origins of these words and how they come to matter in the lived experience of your inquiries. In your inquiry projects, you're going to use etymology and a particular language to get further inside and share the phenomenon with others. So to get inside of the internal structures of meaning means delving deeply into what makes this phenomenon what it is. And Van Manen writes, the insight into the essence of a phenomenon involves a process of reflectively appropriating, of clarifying, and of making explicit the structure of meaning of the lived experience. He goes on to say, making something of a text or a lived experience by interpreting its meaning is more accurately a process of insightful invention, discovery, or disclosure. Grasping and formulating a thematic understanding is not a rule-bound process, but a free act of seeing. And so in your inquiry work, seeing can be argued also as never as a free act wholly, as we're arriving with particular ways of seeing formed through ongoing historical trajectories and orientations. And you're indeed creating something in your living inquiry projects. You're attending to a shared experience with someone else and thinking through this experience so that you might bring out something pedagogical to think about. Not necessarily with children in this task, but you're resonating with the essence of a particular concept as it's lived with someone else, and you're creating meaning from it through your writing and photography. And you're arriving at this phenomenon with an orientation, with something that you're looking for. So by internal structures of meaning, we mean the ideas and meanings that are not on the surface, identifying the thematic phrases, main ideas, significant concepts to help guide this search and research. You're gathering a collection of words or phrases that describe some aspects of the essence of something. So for example, what is it that makes dancing dancing? There are particular words that might help you elucidate dancing, the flow, the tonalities, words that dance, the whatness and the thatness of things, the events, the processes, or the experiences. And you're also thinking of words or phrases that synthesize and express significant moments or ideas within the text. So you're searching for the internal structure of meaning, and it moves beyond a telling of only what this thing is or what happened, but it goes beyond that, and you're pulling out generative meanings or propositions of something. So in order to do this, you're going to need to find a way to get inside the experience, to really inhabit the phenomenon and the idea or the concept that you're thinking with. So the process of creating interpretive textual accounts brings the experience to life, and in such a way that is recognized as a possible experience. So there's some kind of balance between recognizability and perhaps generalizability, but also it's particular, it's specific. So it's an effort to get close to the meaningfulness of experience. It's a poeticizing activity. It's interpretive, richly descriptive, and not always literal. So the quality and use of the language matters. So consider essence, or the inner essential nature of a thing. In Latin, essence comes from essential and from esse, which means to be. So you're paying attention to the whatness of things. What does it mean to be this? A balance between the particular and the general. So for example, last week with Sylvia, we discussed her photography around getting closer and noticing the life of a sunflower. There's a generalizability that we share in knowing a sunflower, but we're also highlighting this sunflower. Not every sunflower, but we are specific and particular. So in your inquiry, for example, if you're thinking about time, you can gather sayings like time flies, being in time and out of time, running out of time, wasting time, spending time. Try to think of some of the linguistic games that might help you bring more attention to the phenomenon as it's lived. So in the beginnings of your inquiry projects, you can consider the starting point, as Vinmanen says, of phenomenological research is largely a matter of identifying what it is that deeply interests you and of identifying this interest as a true phenomenon, that is, as an experience as it's lived through. So in this sense, interest means to be in the midst of something. So the questions that you're asking propose that you be situated in the lived experience. You're living in the question and you're orienting to the experience. So this implies a vantage point and a particular interest. What is the orientation, or what interest will you orient towards? Because you can't story everything that happens, but you need to select something particular and then orient yourself towards that. And he also goes on to say that it's not enough to simply recall experiences, as we've been discussing. He says, I must recall the experience in such a way that the essential aspects, the meaning structures of this experience as lived through, are brought back in such a way that we recognize this description as a possible experience, which means as a possible interpretation of that experience. So you're thinking of inventive ways of telling beyond mere description or surface level tellings, and this requires some sense of poetic thought and aesthetic attention. So to give you a general sense of the processes of phenomenological inquiry, and I'm conscious that it's not a steps or not a sequence that is necessarily followed in order, but in the text they offer this sort of guidance, which might be helpful as you're trying to plan your research design and think about how this can unfold. So you're going to begin by tuning to a phenomenon which seriously interests you, which is your topic, investigating the experience as you live it with another, rather than how we conceptualize it. So you're not arriving to this topic with what you already know. You're trying to investigate the experience from a place of openness and novelty in some sense as you live it with another. You're going to reflect on essential themes which characterize the phenomenon, and then you're going to describe the phenomenon through the art of writing and rewriting. And then you're going to maintain oriented to the pedagogic relation of the phenomenon. So thinking about what is mattering here, what meaning can be pulled, and why is it significant.